This conference will now be recorded.
All right, thank you for joining the City of Kingston's Complete Streets Advisory Council. Today is December 9th, 2020. My name is Greg Krupp, the Complete Streets Liaison and Organizer for virtual meetings. Before we begin our meeting, we would like to go over a few meeting guidelines to help us navigate the system as efficiently and respectfully as possible. We ask that members of the public and press remain muted and off camera for the length of the meeting. As organizer, I reserve the right to mute anyone. Committee members and city staff will control their own mute button. Good practice would be to mute yourself if you are not speaking to avoid background noise and feedback. If a committee member or staff wishes to speak, they will raise their hand. The chairperson will call on them before they speak by stating their name clearly for all our listeners. All of our meetings are recorded. Both video and written transcriptions will be made available to the public on the city's website at a later date. Although we will not have public speaking tonight, you can submit your written comments to me at gkrupp, that's GKRUPP, at kingston-ny.gov, dropping them off at the Dropbox located outside of City Hall. We also encourage people to reach out to committee chairs with public comment. If you have any audio issues, send a text message to the following number, 845-418-9634. That's my work cell phone. I will repeat this number, but be aware that phone calls will not be answered during this meeting. The number to text is 845-418-9634. As the organizer for today's meeting, I reserve the right to lock and pause the meeting to eject anyone who has behaved inappropriately, although I don't expect to. Lastly, at tonight's meeting, we have in attendance the chair, Bob Dennison, vice chair, John Grossbolin, committee members, Andy Turko-Levin, Sarah Wenk, and city staff members, Kristen Wilson, and myself. We also have caller number 1, who I'm still unsure of who that is. Thank you for your patience, and on behalf of Complete Streets, I wish you and your family good health, and I turn it over to Bob Dennison.
Well done, Greg. Caller number 1, if your name wasn't mentioned, please let us know who you are. Nothing.
All right. Anonymous.
Anonymous, right. Okay, I don't think this will take as long as we have had in the past because not much is going on. The first order of business is there anybody who, any guests who want to make if caller 1 is a guest who would like to make a comment or a question or ask a question, public comment, now is your opportunity. All right, hearing nothing, I'm going to move forward and presume that there is no comments from the public or from guests. So the next order of business would be minutes of the last meeting. I assume everybody's read them. Is anybody want to make a motion to accept the minutes or to make changes to the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, so John's made a motion. Anybody want a second? Sarah will second it. Any discussion?
That is good to me.
No discussion. Okay, yeah, everything's good. All right, so can I have a vote on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Your hand, just raise your hand. That's good enough. Anybody opposed? Any abstainers? Okay, the minutes are accepted. Well done. Old business. The project update discussion. Project update. Lots of things are going on, but things should be closing down, I would guess. There's lots of websites that are around about the projects. I've looked at some of them, but not all of them. It looks to me like the roundabout at 587 is going to be wrapping up for the winter. They're still working. They're still saying that they're not going to be. You guys probably know better, more than I. I'd ask Greg and Kristen if you want to give us any updates that are beyond what's published as on a website.
I believe what we publish, what Summer Smith published, is the most recent update. They're in what they call phase 3 right now, and that's where they're going to keep it for the winter. They're just finishing up their underground utilities. They had sanitary sewer on Albany Ave and some water main work. And that's kind of where they're going to end it for the season.
Last I spoke to somebody from DA Collins, he was saying that once that's done, the stuff in the spring is going to go pretty rapidly. Underground is a pain in Kingston, but once you're above the surface, things can go more quickly. So they're optimistic. The Broadway job, is that shut down yet?
No, so they're doing like basically a soft shutdown where they're not going to be in the road after a certain point. They're kind of shutting everything down, all the work that they have to do in the road. And then over the winter, there's all these vaults in the sidewalk hatches, and they're going to redo those throughout the winter.
Okay.
So they may not ever be fully shut down because they're going to keep working on those, but they won't be in the street anymore, and they won't be doing, bigger work.
Yeah. They seem to be, I don't know that outfit, but they seem to be doing okay. I don't know what your guys' experience is. I know we were concerned, but that's good. Empire State Trail, that we could probably put that off for a conversation later. Maybe at the outreach and education piece. I don't know, are they closed? Are they done? The Empire State Trail work?
Kristen may know better than I.
I've seen some emails that have indicated that they're getting ready to close out the project, but I'm not entirely sure if they have completed all of the close out and transfer to the city as far as, maintenance responsibilities are concerned.
Yep.
Yeah, there were a few things that I was looking at that didn't seem done to me. If you're heading southbound on 32 on a bicycle, they don't have sharrows on the section where the sidewalk is. And I mean, technically, we're not supposed to be riding bicycles on the sidewalk based on, the city code. Do you know if they're going to add sharrows at some point?
I think what they have now is per plan.
Yeah,
It
it doesn't seem done.
I do not recall sharrows being in the designs for that section.
Yeah.
So is it a sidewalk or is it a multi-use path at that point?
It's a sidewalk.
Sidewalk, okay. We're talking, okay. Well,
It's better than it was, but there's still on the southbound side, that between the white line, the fog line, and the sidewalk gets down to maybe 16 inches or 18 inches at one point.
right.
And the other thing that seems to be an issue is that they put in the I call them buzz bars. I know there's another term for them on the shoulders.
Yeah.
And they put those into the bike lane.
Yep.
And I don't believe they put the gaps. You're supposed to have gaps between sections of the buzz bars the way they did on 32 north of Kingston. And they didn't do that on the 32 south of Kingston part, which I thought was troublesome. If there's any obstruction on the shoulder, there's no way to get around it without riding through the buzz bars, number one. And number two, they've effectively narrowed that bike lane down by probably 18 inches by putting the buzz bars to the right of the fog line. And there's a gap between the buzz bars and the fog line.
Right.
I don't think they handled that very well. And if there's some way to kind of correct that would be wonderful.
Sounds to me like the correction is to take the lane. You don't want to be out in that's a narrow shoulder, and you don't want to be out there with the rumble strips.
Yeah.
That's a bad practice, the rumble strips.
No, I think they screwed that up. And I really think we need sharrows on that stretch between the trailhead near Rockwell
Yeah.
coming all the way in. And the other thing that's unclear is when you get down near Washington Avenue, I can't tell if there are parking spaces or bike lanes down there. There's some areas it says no parking, but then there's a handicap parking sign. So I'm not sure what's going on the northbound side in terms of the signage compared to the lines on the road. And then on the southbound side, there's really nothing. You know, is it a bike lane or is it parking? I can't tell. But that's, you know, a bit troublesome.
Sarah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, just having used the trail mostly for walking and running, the biggest problem I've noticed is at where the crossing is by the Energy Squared parking lot, that end, that crossing is no cars just do not acknowledge that crossing at all. There's signs there, they say trail crossing. They don't slow down, they don't stop. I mean, I saw a guy that was a little ways away, you know, like a guy working with a cane, and cars were just zooming by him as he stood trying to cross there. And it's actually something I wanted to bring up in general about these pedestrian crossings almost everywhere in the city. They're just not, the cars don't deal with them. And I mean, I was talking to a friend about it, and we're like, you know, if they made those crossings raised, the cars would have to slow down.
Yeah. Well, they're
But the way
supposed to
they are
stop.
now,
Yeah, they're
they
supposed to
might
stop.
as well just not be there. You can put up all the bright green signs in the world and just ignore it.
But it's the same thing on Hurley Avenue where they put the hawks up. I
Yeah,
crossed Hurley Avenue with the hawk flashing and had people slam on their brakes at the last minute. They weren't even slowing down.
Yeah.
But I was crossing the street in the walk with the flashing lights going.
Yeah, but it's a New York education thing. It does make my wife crazy. I'll cross Albany Avenue in the crosswalk and step into traffic, which probably is not the most prudent thing to do, but it's the way people need to learn to. The law says you stop for a pedestrian.
Yeah.
I just, you know, I wonder if there can't be more of an effort to make these raised crosswalks. I mean, it's just like, that seems, you know, they don't have, not just enough to make the cars understand that they need to slow down.
Well, the point is they need to stop. The law says they need to stop. And you know,
But they don't care.
I saw in Orange. I was involved in a project in Orange County in the town of Muncie where we actually we got grants from the Traffic Safety Board. Brian, I think of Brian with this, and got the police overtime to go out and do a targeted enforcement for people who didn't stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk. You know, we had police dress, you know, in plain clothes and step into the traffic, and if they didn't stop, they got a ticket. And you know, after a few of those, people start to understand that there's consequences. You know, that goes to the education thing we're going to talk about later. But crosswalks are a huge issue in New York. You know, people do not follow the law, don't stop. So something we need to do.
I mean, Chief Sinagra in Saugerties has dealt with this very effectively. It was somewhat controversial, which surprises me, but he was out there with his officers ticketing people and giving them citations at, you know, the Main and Market Street area in Saugerties. And I'm sure they'll be out there again. If we want some input, I'm sure he'd be happy to offer it.
Mm-hmm. It's very effective.
There might be grants through the Traffic Safety Board. Rose Quinn would be the best person to speak to that if there was something available.
Okay. Well, we need
Sorry, I was late, guys.
The police would have to agree to do it, and that could be a challenge. Yes, well, Kristen.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something about the rumble strips on Route 32. I want to be honest that we requested them because we thought that there would be a 5-foot shoulder, and then the rumble strip would. I mean, my fear about having the bike lanes for the 5-foot shoulders is that it actually would encourage cars to drive faster.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, we've had people killed on like 9W where the shoulder is very wide, and then the cars are using their cell phones or whatever they're doing, and they drift out of the vehicle lane and into the shoulder. So the city did request those. However, I'm looking at the plans now, and it just says, I mean, this is how I interpret it. It says 5-foot shoulder, and then it shows the rumble strip going right over the white line.
Right.
But the way that you described it, John, it sounds like they put the white line and the rumble strip is inside of.
There's a 4 to 6 inch gap between the rumble strips and the white line. So they've, really cut into that bike lane. And in some spots there, that shoulder, I seriously doubt it was even close to 5 feet wide, especially in the one spot by the curb. Trying to think where that is exactly. But I think it's as you're approaching the Golden Hill exit, or turnoff.
Yeah.
The sidewalk kind of juts out into the road in terms of the way they lined it.
It's not a pleasant bike ride. I've done it. It's not a pleasant bike ride from in essence, that piece where the sidewalk starts toward the trailhead. It's not a pleasant ride, to be honest. The cars are traveling too fast, and the sight distance isn't great. You feel vulnerable. At least I felt vulnerable.
So do you think that it would have, I guess, I mean, we requested the rumble strips because of the issue of this people speeding and going even faster because the road's wider. I think it sounds like the rumble strips were placed in the wrong place, but I'm also just wondering for the future, I did see some of the Facebook activity about rumble strips. Is that not a recommended practice?
Well,
they were placed properly.
It's the controversy around rumble strips is that they're very effective for keeping automobiles and trucks in their lanes. They work great. They're not great for bicyclists, and bike riders need to avoid them. And I was involved in a couple of claims where bike riders, ran across rumble strips and crashed, and so really if you're a bike rider, you got to stay away from rumble strips. So I would, at that location, the more prudent thing to do, I think, is take your lane. So maybe Sharrows might be a long-term solution ultimately. But let's see how it goes with people on the shoulder. I mean, the shoulder is narrow there, so it's a for a bike ride.
I think what I'm asking is that if the rumble strips were placed on the inside of the white line, would that be better than having them on where they are now? Because then we would have a 5-foot shoulder and rumble strips that would prevent the cars from going into the 5-foot shoulder.
Yeah, if they had done them the way they were done on 32 North, that would have been fine because they were out to the white line and they had the gaps between sections of rumble strip. I can't remember the distances involved, but every, 30 feet or something like that, there's a gap in the rumble strips so that you could pull out if you had to and then get back in without riding through the rumble strips. And I guess somebody different did this work as compared to what was done on 32 North. Whoever did it 32 North, they got it right. Whoever did 32 South, as far as I'm concerned, they screwed it up.
It might have been the same company, honestly. Yeah, I mean, when I look at the plans, it doesn't really say specifically. It just shows the rumble strips like exactly over the white line, right through them.
Yeah, typically you don't do it on the line, on the stripe, but Typically, you do it on the side of the stripe. You don't do it on the stripe, typically. But the
So,
it might be worth mentioning to them as they ask for the sign off to see what they have to say about it. But I doubt they're going to change anything at this point.
Yeah, that'd be a tough sell to get that changed, I imagine.
Right.
Now, the other thing that was very weird to me was that south wall in 32, in both travel directions, there are signs that say something to the effect that use the pedestrian crossing signals. And there are no pedestrian crossing signals there. I'm not sure what they were referring to. Do you know if there's plans for some kind of electronic pedestrian crossing there?
I don't know.
I don't think that there are. John, do you know where to find the plans for this project?
No.
If you go to, let me think about how to tell you how to get there the easiest way.
Can you send me the link?
Go to the city website /EST South. Then you go down to the bottom. Did you find your way there?
No, I'm still trying to work around my desk.
But let's leave it this way, John. If you want to take a look at that and make some comments, you know, we can send a note to the. We'll send a note in to Kristen, I guess. Congratulations, Kristen. And you can send it
Well,
on.
you know, honestly, like I've had a minimal interaction with this project. It's really been key.
Who's the person? Who's the contact?
I would say to email me, Greg, and John Schulteis.
Okay.
I mean, ultimately, the city engineer is the main contact.
Right. Okay, so we'll send it in to those three if you have comments, and they can send them on to the state and see what they have to say.
Yeah, if you could send me that link for that project plan.
I'll send it to you right now.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, it's down at the bottom. It says project links, and then it says New York State DOT bid advertisement page / final plans. So it's a huge document, like 176 pages. But I think, and the thing about it is that this project combined multiple projects into one huge bid document. So I think they might even had some parts of the trail down in Poughkeepsie or in different areas. So you have to kind of look for the Kingston sections.
Okay.
Doesn't surprise me. Okay, good. All right, let's leave that there. The Hudson River Brickyard Trail is done. Somebody said I haven't been there. I should go look at that.
People have been on it. It's not
All right.
officially opened yet, but the past couple times I went down there, I've seen people walking on it.
Are we mad about that?
Want people to use it, right? There's a couple of things. John had to come up with a punch list. All the major stuff is done. Some signs had to go up, and there's some grates that need to be replaced on it before we do a soft opening. And I think that's the plan. There's going to be a soft opening sometime soon in the near future, and then a bigger opening in the spring. And a big part of it is they have to figure out opening and closing the gates. Because there will be hours to that trail. And so that we'll have to determine whether it's, winter versus summer hours, or if it's quarterly hours. That still has to be worked out between Hutton Brickyards and the town of Ulster to give people access, and what's going to happen if somebody gets locked in there. Those are some of the things they got to work out for the opening.
Yeah.
But as far as the construction, 99% basically.
Good. All right. Good. This is, good. Uptown transportation improvements. That's interesting. That's kind of, I guess that goes to the signal stuff. Is that right? Is that what that one means? I don't know what that one means anymore.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I just wanted to go back really quickly. The the rumble strips in the north part were done by the same contractor.
Okay.
I don't know why, but they did them differently. And when I look at the plans, the plans look the same to me for each of them. So
I guess is they had a sub do it.
yeah. For uptown transportation improvements, we held a public meeting. I think it was maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. That is for the Schwinn Drive street improvements and then intersection upgrades on Clinton Avenue at Clinton and Albany, Clinton and Westbrook Lane, Clinton and Main, and Clinton and John. So I would encourage everybody to, we actually did both English and Spanish. It was our first time simultaneously interpreting for a city meeting. So that was pretty exciting. Everything worked out at the very last minute. So you can watch that on YouTube, and have the project is on kingston.com, and you can make comments there. The end of December.
Okay, so you figured out what to do with that intersection. That's good.
Well, we haven't figured it out. It's, some preliminary plans that are getting comments on.
All right. That's kind of a mess. Good. All right. So look at that and make comments. That's a good opportunity. I'm sorry I missed the public hearing and public meeting.
Yeah. That comment tool that they've got there isn't very user friendly. I think they only give you like 200 characters or something. So
oh, really?
Yeah.
It sounds like it's user friendly for staff, though.
Yeah.
Come on now. So is it? I'm going to look at this because I didn't realize that. It's where you can put in the ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very short.
Okay, I didn't realize there was a character limit. I will talk to Ruth Ann about that. We might be able to add another. I mean, you can also just put in one idea and write another. Do they let you do?
You can't create an entire thought of, what the issue is, why you think it's an issue.
Okay.
Yes, you can write 25 comments, but how do you put it all back together when you read them?
I guess you're not on Twitter, John.
Nor Facebook.
Yeah, I assume you could send in a memo if you want it, a hard copy to someone.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that. I'm the project manager, so you can just send me an email. Although I prefer not to, because then one of the reasons that we're using the website is so that we can make sure that that comments don't get lost.
Right.
But see if I can add another way, or perhaps I can change it so the length of the comments can be longer. Let me ask Ruth Ann about that.
Okay.
Thanks for that feedback, because we've been looking to use this tool for a number of our projects. So
yeah. And me personally, I don't find that proposal to be very good from a complete street standpoint, because they've added capacity for vehicles. There's no consideration for cyclists in there at all. And that block between Albany Avenue and Westbrook is used by a lot of transportation riders who are going down to the plaza. And then on the Schwenk Drive side, by having a bidirectional bike lane on the creek side of Schwenk, that's pretty much cutting all the uptown riders off from that, because there's no good way to get to it. If people are afraid to ride Schwenk Drive, they're certainly not going to ride Washington Avenue. We're losing Fair Street, and Frog Alley, you have to go through a roundabout to get to it. You know, I don't think it's a very good design from a complete street standpoint. I think we really need travel lane on each side so that people can use the traffic control devices at the end. Washington Avenue is a problem, and where that bi-directional multi-use trail ends, that's the worst corner of that whole intersection for getting across the street. I stopped using it. I always cross at either North Front Street or on the North Front Street side of the Schwenk Drive, Washington Avenue intersection. Because you get too many people making turns, even though you've got pedestrian signals saying that it's okay to cross. And they don't yield to you. You got to jump out of the way. It's the same old story. And now we're dropping the bike lane at an intersection where it's almost impossible to cross safely. I think you're better off riding in the lanes on your bike, using the lights. I think that whole thing needs to be looked at a little closer with more input from cyclists who are familiar with it.
Well, it's good. And we'll make comments. I mean, that's what the public, we have till the end of December to make comments. That's a good thing to do. See where they go with it. Good. Now, I'm going to move on to unless we're e-bike and e-scooters. Is that an okay thing to move on to? I don't really know what we talked about that last time. We talked about the county's policy. I'm told that the Shokan Trail does not permit them. I mean, does permit them now.
Does permit them.
Okay.
Walker Valley Rail Trail, they're following the same guidelines as like Minnewaska.
Mhm.
And I think that limits them to the lowest
Type 1
level, pedal assist.
Right. So really, there's not much for us to add there. I mean, we're not gonna. There was a discussion about whether we wanted to take a position and recommend to the Common Council to do some kind of a regulation. I don't know what's our collective mind about that now. Do people think we should take a position, or should we let it ride? Any thoughts?
My biggest concern with it is if we've got the Empire State Trail coming through Kingston. Kingston shouldn't be any different from anybody else in terms of how it's handled. Right. So if somebody's coming up, the east side of the river, crossing the walkway, coming up Walker Valley Rail Trail on an e-bike, and then they hit Kingston, it's got a completely different set of rules. Yeah. That wouldn't be good or fair. And if the rest of them are basically following the state regulations, then I think we should let it ride on the state regulations. It's kind of the way I look at it from a touring bicyclist perspective.
Oh, I agree. That makes sense. Anybody else? Everybody agree with that, or what do you think? Yeah, everybody's good with that? So we're just going to let it ride. So Greg, you can take it off the agenda next time, because we'll let it ride and go from there. And Emily can continue to ride her crazy electric bike all throughout the day.
Oh, you're getting rid of it, Emily.
The truck bike, electric truck bike.
Good. Actually, I'm thinking about a new one this spring, electric bike.
Harley Davidson's selling them now.
Oh God. Conversions to signals to stop signs. It's going crazy throughout the city. They're going beyond your schedule. They're going beyond your study, Brian.
Were they? The only intersections that I've noticed are the ones that we reviewed through the Creighton Manning study.
Okay.
If there are additional ones, I'm not familiar with them right now.
I like it.
I have to say the one that I don't agree with taking away is the Washington Avenue and Pearl Street one. That one, they get flying. I don't know. That's
I
the
don't
one,
know.
it's hard to
Well,
see.
I have just a few comments that I'd like to make and observations, if I could.
Absolutely.
It was, of course, the Transportation Council completed the study, and the intersections that the city determined they would implement, meaning they would remove the signal from. I believe all the ones that we recommended, the city has now acted upon, at least close to all of the ones. So part of the recommendations included a set of essentially instructions following the Uniform Manual on Traffic Control Devices method for what a municipality should do when a signal is removed. And there's several steps, including, public notification, obviously, posting a sign at the site, and then continuing evaluation. So for whatever reason, and I understand from DPW's perspective, there was minimal notification, I think, for the public. So a lot of people were taken by surprise, and that's to be understood. The other thing particularly with Pearl and a few other of the intersections, the intersection has not been repainted. So the stop bars in some instances are not in the right location. And that creates a wider box. What you want to do is try to get a compact box at that intersection so that people know right where to stop and they know who has gotten there first by using the stop bar. And so Lindemann had been repainted, and a couple other places had been repainted. But I think the lack of paint adds to some of the confusion. And the other thing I'll say, and then I'm happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability, is whenever you have a change in traffic patterns, there is a very known likelihood that there will be an increase in crashes as people adjust. One way to counteract that is through enforcement. And I have seen some enforcement. I think it was lacking when the initial rollout occurred, which would have been helpful. But overall, I think it's working fine. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think it's working well from a motorist standpoint. When I have used it as a pedestrian on Washington Ave, I haven't had any problems, but I know that my experience is different from others. So
I've had a very good experience of walking, biking, and driving. I think it's, the traffic calming effect of it has been wonderful, because, before people would try to, beat the light, or the way the lights were timed, they could just, come flying down like Washington Avenue. But as far as enforcement, I've seen the KPD parked up on the sidewalk on Washington Avenue at the Pearl Street intersection quite a few times.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's part of the, that multi-agency enforcement thing that's been going on, or if this is specifically related to traffic control there, but they've been here quite a bit.
Well, we reached out to Chief Tinty. I reached out to him directly and CC'd other city staff. And the chief said he would get resources out there as available. Obviously, they've been very busy. But, some of the complaints I've heard is that people don't stop at stop signs, so it should be a traffic signal. Well, that to me is just ridiculous. I mean, the problem is not the treatment. The problem is the fact that people are not stopping at stop signs. That's a big problem.
Right.
That can only be addressed through enforcement and education. So, and the other thing, I guess maybe one of my final points is that people say that signals are better, but what you're going to have, I think, and Bob, I haven't boned up on the literature in a little while, but you're still going to have crashes, but at a signal, they're going to be more extreme. They're going to be more severe because people are going to be going at a higher rate of speed, typically.
Right.
So I mean, well, we're gonna monitor it to the best of our ability, but there's going to be a lag in the data. It will take the Transportation Council at least a year to gather data, to have a useful amount of data to then see, okay, what is really happening pre, post treatment.
Right.
And you know, I'm sure we'll see I'm hoping it'll just be a temporary spike in crashes. And I'm hoping that then it'll trail off. So.
Well, but you don't have any data at this point about any crashes, whether there's been an increase or not.
Correct. I mean, the Transportation Council, you know, I can request individual the MV 104 crash reports, and I can get them within about a week of a crash occurring. But our data through the New York State DMV, GIS geocoded data, there's a 6-month lag on that data. So, and it's going to take a minimum of 6 months before we start to see anything regarding these intersections.
Yeah, and the first 6 months are really not indicative of its long-term performance.
Right.
You know, people need to get used to it. They need to get educated. And you're right about the, you know, traffic signals change the kind of crash you get. You know, they're not any safer. They're not any less. It just changes the kind of crash you get.
Right.
So
I would hope, and I've already told DPW this, and I know they're very busy, and I think once is enough for Ed, but the paint at those intersections, I think, is critical, and I think can really do make a big step toward notifying motorists that you're coming to a juncture here that you need to pay closer attention than what you typically do. And when you have that retro reflectivity on the ground and on the pole of the stop sign, those signals, you know, come together, and typically most people see them. But I agree with Andy that the askew, the fact that you have, you know, Pearl Street in Washington is at a slight angle, it creates difficulty with sight lines. And you really have to sort of work to make sure you're checking all your blind spots to make sure there's no one waiting in advance.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I would just add, you know, since I live nearby, and I mean, I think it's largely going well. I think I would agree with everything everyone's saying. I think Pearl is probably the most problematic because so many people are turning left there onto Pearl off of Washington. And, you know, now I guess I don't know if the hedge just lost its leaves or if it's been cut back, but there's a little more visibility around that turn, but that may need to be addressed when things are blooming again. You know, I just think I would say as a pedestrian, I generally find it better than as a driver. I think that cars tend to just see what they can get away with. And, you know, I'll pull up, I'll stop, and then another car, even though it got there, you know, 10 seconds after me, will just plow through. But I would say in general, I think it's gone pretty well. But yeah, paint those intersections. You know,
probably won't have until spring.
I mean, not do that seems completely insane to me.
Yeah, we've lost the season this year, so this spring will be when they do it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that really, and I would say in the meantime, keep those flags up and stuff so that there's a little more, you know, a little more notice.
Yeah.
And then, the people in that house may have to trim back their hedge some more in the spring.
Or the city might have to do it for them, which is always a pleasant thing to have to do.
Well, the tree commission has done a lot of that kind of thing.
One last point again, I just wanted to emphasize that all the intersections that we recommended be turned into stop signs, they didn't meet a single one of the, I believe there are 9 separate warrants for a traffic signal. We have never had, since I started working here, a clear result for a traffic study than we did for this study. So it was pretty definitive results for the intersection. So you know, but we'll examine it again in the future and take a look at it and see if we were right.
I mean, I really do think like like everything else I bring up, it's about enforcement and education.
Right.
A lot of drivers don't know what the rules are when you get to a four-way stop.
Right.
Who's supposed to go first, and a lot of people think that if nobody sees it, it wasn't against the law, so we'll just get away with it. So I would love to see, just a whole bunch of tickets get given out, and maybe.
Yeah, that's yeah, that would be enforcement is a key piece of it. You're absolutely right. Let's move on to. So I think it's good. I think it's a successful project on many levels. And it saves the city money too, because you don't have to deal with these traffic signals that are way out of date and shouldn't be there. The whole liability issue about having signals that don't meet warrants is a whole nother conversation that that we needn't get into about that. Outreach and education, our next item, which is an interesting one. I wrote to the Empire State Trail, the crash there where the bicyclist died. I did write to Chief Tinty, as did Greg, to see if they had anything to add about that, and they did not get back to us. So my assumption is that that it's too early for them to have anything to say about it.
One thing I found out about that was not in the press was that the cyclist was actually on an e-bike.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Oh.
And I keep coming back to this idea that a lot of these e-bikes, particularly in a situation like that where you've got a downhill, may not have adequate brakes. And I'm wondering if that could have been, part of the problem here.
Because that's an interesting point. I didn't know. I talked to Brian, the guy at the bike shop, and who knew the guy, and said that he was a regular biker. I mean, he was not a novice. He was a year-round, biker. So it's surprising that he passed the sign. It looks from what you read in the paper, which is really all I know about it, is that he passed the sign and hit the bus, passed the stop sign.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of discussions about that intersection, and one thing that's been brought up by several people is that the bike lane stop signs are smaller than a standard stop sign, and the one in that travel direction, which I guess would be north, sits back off of the edge of the pavement quite a bit, and it kind of gets lost in the background. So it's possible that somebody wouldn't even notice it, is I guess where I'm going with that.
well, there's a stop ahead sign too on that. I don't know if that was
Yeah.
there crash.
Yeah.
But
yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking about that.
Right.
But I know somebody in county planning has a copy of the accident report. I won't mention any names, but it's got the details of the e-bike and so forth in it.
I mean, it's public information, John. I requested it from the safety officer, Diane Beidel.
Yeah.
I don't know how we disseminate them. I know there are rules because there is personal contact information in the NV 104 of witnesses that needs to be redacted before that information is released. But I did review it, and John's correct. He was riding an e-bike. There's no information about speed or a question as to what the travel speed of either vehicle was at the time of the collision. Everything that was released by the police department was in line with what was in the accident report or the crash report. The only thing that I thought was the only thing in addition was in the crash diagram, it appeared the cyclist hit in the upper right-hand corner of the bus. It's sort of a chicken and an egg thing. Who hit who? I had the impression that the cyclist rode clean into the side of the bus and then went over. That was just my impression. But when I read this, it was clearly a, well, I don't even want to use the word clearly, but it was obviously a devastating crash.
Yeah. I know they pulled the tapes from the bus, but I hadn't heard what was on those tapes.
Yeah.
I know that because my son works for the bus company and he's the one that pulled the tapes for him.
Yeah. So I'm sure there'll be a further discussion, investigation. I'm sure the state DOT is also doing one because it was an active construction site. So they'll be looking at it as well as the contractor who has liability because at this point it was still under his control, I believe. Still is now, I think. So his insurance company is going to want to know what's our exposure.
Yeah.
You know? So there'll be more to come on that, but it's interesting. The e-bike piece I didn't know.
No, that wasn't in the press.
Yeah. I don't think it changes our position on e-bikes, but it's an interesting other factor.
Yeah.
The general citywide bicycle infrastructure. This ties together with this outreach and education. I did write to the mayor and said, we're concerned about this and we think there should be an education piece put in because of all the changes to the city streets and because of the bicycle infrastructure. He got back to me and told me he got the note, but I haven't really heard much since then. I don't know. I suppose I could reach out again, or we can try to figure out how we do that come spring. I expect it would be a spring activity. I know he's got lots going on right now. It's not an easy time to be in government. But I still think it's something that's important enough to push. See if we can do something this spring. And maybe I'll reach out to Tom Polk and see what he has to say. Kristen.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that we held a staff meeting with GPI, I guess maybe it was a week ago, and we are working on an outreach plan for Broadway at least. In anticipation of the installation of the bike lane. So, it is internally something that we're putting together along with Emily and Summer. We had quite a bit of discussion about content. We had lots of ideas for content, like doing flyers through the water bill, potentially video, some sort of video campaign with people actually navigating the bicycle boxes or the bicycle lane on Broadway, showing how that's supposed to be done. So there are lots of things to do, and we don't have, as much staff capacity as we would like. And there's lots of content already out there. GPI is collecting a bunch of content that we can potentially reutilize or just remanufacture and share with the community. If anybody has any ideas for how you could help the staff with producing content, I think maybe it was Greg was in that meeting, had one idea about getting a SUNY New Paltz intern to help with the videos. But yeah, certainly if there's, once we get the plan together, we can share it with you. And then if there's anything that folks can do to volunteer or help out with getting producing it, that would be great. And also just with getting the word out once we have the materials.
Yeah. So we at the Transportation Council that have, this subject has come up. It's about 3-4 years ago, we actually had a proposal from the Safety Institute at the college, which is where Rose Quinn works, to do a 2-year public outreach on just general safety campaign. And it never got off the ground for a variety of reasons, and it's still been out there. So the Transportation Council is willing to put forth resources and we can use our planning funds for media buys.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking like a billboard.
Mhm.
And I know Capital District Transportation Council in Albany did a significant, they developed a significant program. I can't, it was a catchy title like Capital Connect or something like that. And they developed a variety of materials, but none as quite as specific that we could just take off the shelf and apply to Broadway, because this is a very unique design that's coming to fore here. But there might be some other materials or approaches. So let's just keep in touch, Kristen. I'm developing the UPWP. I will be putting resources toward this general topic of bike and pedestrian safety, education, and awareness. And I think that we have a lot of flexibility in how those dollars can be used. So let's talk more offline about that.
Okay. Brian, can I just ask a quick question? Would it be possible to hire a consultant to do the work with the funds?
Yeah, I mean, potentially. I mean, you know as well as most of us do about our turnaround time for advertising, bidding, hiring, and getting under contract a consultant. I mean, I can work as quickly as I can and put this at the top of the ticket, so to speak, but there's still a major lag. If we're opening a facility in, I don't know, June, July, August, September, I don't know if that's enough time at this point to really get a full campaign up and running if we have to hire a consultant to do so.
Can you do it in concert? Could you do it in concert with the city or without hiring a consultant? I mean, all government resources?
We've never done like pass-through funds. Is that sort of what you're talking about?
I don't know whether they're saying pass through or joint. You know, if the city hired an intern, you know, I don't know. I don't know the model that would work for that, whether it would be pass through or whether it be a joint project.
Yeah, we could. I mean, they're a member of the council, of course.
Right.
So with that brings, you know, some privileges.
Status.
Yeah.
Well, and it may be that we don't need a full consultant to run the entire campaign, because we might be able to create a campaign plan, but we might need a consultant, you know, like a graphic designer or a videographer,
Yeah.
you know, so for smaller amounts of money that doesn't have to be a full-on planning consultant. I don't know if we'd be able to utilize the money for, I guess, professional services.
Well, technical services. You don't want to say professional services. If you use it with technical services, the acquisition is easier than professional services.
Right.
So.
Okay, well, we can talk offline, Brian. That would be great.
Yeah, but Dennis and Christopher White have both said that this should be a priority of the Transportation Council, at least to see what we can do. We don't, you know, execution is really the critical part here, and I'm open to ideas in how we can best execute a good safety campaign.
Good. Excellent. That's good. That's good progress. I don't know. I guess we're at new business. Anybody have any new business?
I've actually got a piece of old business, and it's pretty much a question for you, Bob. When we spoke with the state DOT and the city about Quarry Street, wasn't it left that they were going to line Quarry Street, or was that not?
I thought that's what he agreed to do. Yeah, to talk to. Yeah, I thought that's what Corrigan said he would do. Yeah, we probably should touch base with him again and see what.
Yeah,
I'll be happy to do that.
okay. Because to date nothing's been done there, and it also reminds me that they put up a flashing warning sign on Quarry Street, something, you know, watch out for pedestrians, something to that effect, and that has not flashed for months. So I'll have to let somebody know about that too.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting it. It just came to mind again.
And they installed the most useless gate I've ever seen in my life. I was by there the other day. You can walk underneath it, for God's sakes. They have a big slider gate at their main.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a
I have to
difference.
bend over, but I can walk under it.
Yeah.
But any other new business? Kristen had her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we're holding a public meeting on the Henry Street project next Wednesday at 12 noon. We're presenting an edit to the preliminary design. So originally, I can just give you a very brief overview. I don't really want to get into details or comments right now because we'll present it fully at the public meetings. So then folks can either watch that or provide comments after. But essentially the original design had a multi-use pathway on one side of the street for pedestrians and bicyclists. And there are some constraints with utilities and curb lines that, and also trees that was making that particular design look to be very difficult to implement. And so we are now presenting a design with 6-foot sidewalks on each side of the road.
Okay, good. Good to look at.
Yeah, so, you know, if you have a chance to attend, we will be accepting comments for about a month. So, you know, I think our model right now is to hold the, you know, we can only do meetings virtually. So we're holding the meetings and then we give a good amount of time for public comment. And this one will also be provided with Spanish interpretation.
Are they going to call them sidewalks or are they going to call them a multi-use trail or something?
It's called sidewalks.
Sidewalks. Yeah, I was just thinking from a cyclist standpoint that if it's a sidewalk, most people can't use it for cycling.
Yeah, you're in the road, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, if it's for kids, I forgot what the cutoff age is. Was it 12?
That sounds right.
Under 12, they can ride on the sidewalk.
Right. That does sound right.
Yeah.
But the okay, announcements, communications. I have one communication. I had a long conversation with Ed Norman about the sidewalk issue that was brought up about down in the Rondout, and he explained to me that they have been actively and frustratingly trying to enforce it. It's one slab, and they did backfill it so it's passable, but it's gravel. It's not a paver. He's as frustrated as the rest of us. You know, it's done after hours. His code enforcement guy wasn't around because it was at night. I guess the issue should have been, I guess the police should have stopped it because he didn't have a permit, but they didn't do that. So he's frustrated. They continue to bill the guy, and they are going to put a lien on the project, on the property, to replace it. But yeah, he was not. He's quite passionate about how that was a problem and something he's very unhappy about. Also, I don't know if Brian wants to talk about you have there is an event, when is that? This next week?
You talking about the transit one?
Yeah.
Yeah, Connect Mid Hudson, we've been doing thanks, Bob. The Transportation Council, in association with Dutchess and Orange Transportation Councils, we're a partnership in what's called a transportation management area because we have a contiguous area of 200,000 people or more. And we use our resources quite a bit towards transit. Quite a bit of our dollars are transferred to Adirondack Trailways on an annual basis in the millions annually and to other entities. But we've been doing a sort of a step back to take a look at our regional operations and services in terms of transit and how well those services work for the public. It should, interestingly enough, that Ulster County within those 3 counties is the only public transit agency that has operational authority to go outside of its county. So we offer service into Dutchess, we offer service into Orange. The others don't offer service to us. And that's an issue more of commuter patterns mainly. But it's a very detailed study. The presentation should be interesting. Kristen, you were at the last Transportation Council meeting in November. It'll be very similar to that one. We presented the findings to our members at the November Policy Committee meeting. So one of the big takeaway recommendations is rather, we get requests for new service, particularly in places like Ellenville or Woodstock. They want a local service similar to what New Paltz has, where they have their own loop service in New Paltz, primarily because they have the student population there. And those types of services are really expensive. In New Paltz's case, it's paid for by Department of Education and passed through the village. People don't realize that, but that's who's paying for that service. So the big recommendation is micromobility, which is essentially similar to a van pool. It's a cross between van pools and Uber to a certain extent. If you know what a van pool is, it's where commuters get together, a public agency buys a van, and if there's commuters in a municipality that are going to, say, work in Wappingers at IBM, they would all take the same van and then travel back. It's a way to, reduce cars on the road. So micromobility is a primary recommendation to provide service in some of these areas where there are presently gaps in Ulster County. And we think that this has a lot of feasibility and might be the way forward for expansion of transit service in these rural areas. So that meeting, the notice went out on Thursday. It's should be on our website. I'll check after this meeting. So all that information is up there. If you're interested, it's a 6 p.m. meeting tomorrow night virtually.
Good, thanks. You got, and put it in context, the 82-year-old woman that was the first vaccinated in England, when they asked her what she wanted to do after she was vaccinated, her first response was to go out and ride the bus. So just to put it in context, it's important. Buses are important.
3 electric buses coming to Ulster County. Probably, I think next year. I've lost track of the schedule. The hard part's the charging infrastructure, but it's coming together. There's going to be 3 beautiful new electric buses courtesy of scofflaws at Volkswagen. So be on the lookout for that.
Well, see, there's good comes from it. Anybody else have any announcements, communications, events, or updates to talk about? Absent that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Andy seconded it. Just so you're aware, we'll be sending out the schedule for next year's meetings. There's going to be 4 of them. We talked about it earlier. And they'll be quarterly, so you'll be made aware of it. And I think what do we agree to, Greg? The second
Wednesday, like we're doing now.
Wednesday quarterly in February, May, September, and December. So you'll get notifications. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Time, I guess we'll keep the same time. I don't know if we want to do 3 o'clock or do earlier next year.
This works.
This works. Okay. Good. All
Happy
right.
holidays, folks.
Happy
Yeah.
holidays, Merry
Yeah.
Christmas. Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas, happy holidays, everyone.
Quiet holidays.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay. Thanks, Greg.
Bye, everyone.